There's news in the Middle East, and it's enraging some people back here at home. Israel announced a plan to end the war by invading the final Hamas stronghold, heavily populated Gaza City. People, mostly on the political left in America, hate this idea. Senator Warren wrote, "Starving Palestinian children and killing innocent people isn't enough for Netanyahu. Now he wants to control all of Gaza." Echoing what she and other members of the left say about Israel, that they are committing a genocide. Now look, I get the concerns and the criticism of Netanyahu, but here's my beef. I suspect these people are playing politics and picking a side which is the opposite of having a good faith interest in human suffering. Now, that's a big swipe. What's the proof? Well, first, they keep hammering Israel for wanting to kill as many people as they can. They'll even outright call it genocide, most of them. When the only clear case of pure intention and acting on the intention of killing as many as you could in the allotted time of a specific type was seen on October 7th. And it was perpetrated by Hamas and celebrated there and in some quarters here. Next, the mere fact that Israel has announced this far in advance a plan to go to Gaza City proves that they are not genocidal in their aims. Because if you want to kill as many as you can, you don't warn. You don't take a month to actively try to move people out of the area you want to enter. And my question is, if I'm wrong, show me a campaign of recognized genocide that was ever conducted this way, providing warning, telling people where you're going to strike, and trying to move them out. Show me that. Then, my bigger point, if you do not want Israel to invade, okay, and I understand that, and you want the war to end, which I assume you do, what is the obvious catalyst for peace? What is the obvious first step in this conflict? What would end this fastest? Israel saying, okay, we won't defend ourselves anymore. Israel saying, okay, the terror organization that is sworn to our destruction, we'll just leave it alone. We've done enough. Does that really make sense to you? Does that sound like the logical first step? Or is Hamas, the people who started it, surrendering? Is that not the logical first step? If Hamas surrenders and returns the hostages, there is no need, there is no right, there is no benefit to Israel invading Gaza City. Why doesn't Senator Warren make that point in her statement? Why don't any of them pound on Hamas to surrender to end this? Do these people really think Israel is more of a problem than Hamas, a terror organization? Do they really believe Hamas staying in power is the best situation for the same people whom they say they care about, who are actively oppressed by Hamas now and were certainly oppressed before October 7th? Again, I get the criticisms of Netanyahu, okay, for this and a lot of other aggressive moves during the conflict. But to that point, Netanyahu wanted to do a lot more than Gaza City. He wanted to do a full occupation, which is what Senator Warren in her statement seems to suggest to you is what Israel's plan is, and that's not true. That's what he wanted. But the reporting is that Israel's war cabinet met last night and they only approved Gaza City. So they hemmed Netanyahu in. Why doesn't she say that? That's my next point. It is intellectually dishonest to think this can only make the situation worse. Clearly, Israel wants to limit the occupation, okay? Which is the opposite instinct of genocide, for what it's worth. But again, show me when someone mounting a campaign of genocide limited command and control over the enemy by choice. Now, the left argues this is a forced evacuation and therefore a war crime, just like they did last year. But let's look at what happened last year. Do you remember when Israel made the same play on Rafah, R-A-F-A-H? Look it up. Remember, then President Biden said, if Israel invades Rafah, it's a red line, and we're going to stop sending weapons to Israel. Then what happened? He backed down. Why? Because he was Israel's puppet. He's AIPAC. No, think. Because Hamas refused to surrender. They refused to return the hostages. And Israel did what it said it was going to do, which is took time to encourage people, took time to facilitate their evacuation from the area. And they targeted Hamas heads, okay? That's how they got Sinwar. Now, did the move end the war in Rafah? Of course not. But it certainly wasn't a campaign of genocide. And that's not my opinion. You know whose opinion it is? The person who was president of the United States. This is what Biden said. There is now the opportunity for a day after in Gaza without Hamas in power and for a political settlement that provides a better future for Israelis and Palestinians alike. You see him accusing them of genocide? And they did what they said they were going to do, which they now want to do again. If Hamas doesn't surrender, what other option do they have that makes sense from the Israeli perspective? Do you think we would stop defending ourselves from a terror organization because they refuse to surrender? It's important to note that the move by Israel also puts their own people at risk, and not just the soldiers who have to do the operations, but the hostages. Remember, 6 hostages, including Hirsch Poland, Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who we talked about a lot on this show, and to his parents multiple times in Israel and here at home, were executed by Hamas as troops approached their location during the Rafah invasion. I've said many times, and I will say again now, not allowing the media to cover the conflict from the conflict zone is a mistake. We will never know the full truth of what's happening there this way. Now, the rebuttal to that is, yeah, well, Israel's stopping it because they want to control the narrative. How's that working out? The perception of what's happening in Gaza couldn't be any worse for Israel. And I got to say, and I don't mean it as a joke, I never want to hear that the Jews control the American media again. I don't. Because unless all Jews are anti-Zionist, which I never knew, the media couldn't be more stilted against Israel, and increasingly so. So I don't know how they control the media. From all that I can gather, having us on the ground could not make things any worse for Israel or for people who want a real understanding of the situation. I think America should not condition aid on what Israel does to go after Hamas, but they should condition aid on whether or not we get access and on how much aid is on the ground, no matter whether Hamas takes it or not. Flood the zone with aid. Whatever happens, happens. Let us cover it in real time, because the false narratives and fake news are out of control, and this conflict ain't ending anytime soon. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.